let's dive over to the other commitment that Notre Dame got today, Trevor, which was done this morning. And that was a pickup from an in-state young man, and that's Cameron Herron, who we expected that one. That one was a lot more, okay, yeah, that's a matter of when, not if. And that's that happened today. I wasn't sure that it was going to happen today. I know the staff wanted to meet with him this weekend and do some different things. They didn't need to size him up because they had him on campus this summer, and they know exactly how big he is and how he moves and those type of things. So they were able to get him on campus this weekend. Cameron Herron, who's committed to Iowa. He's a 3-star kid by most of the services. On3 does have him as a 4-star, number 272 overall player in the country. Had been committed to Iowa since June. Camped at Notre Dame this summer. It's a kid that Notre Dame liked, but not enough to move on at the time. And obviously now that they see that they feel that they need that fourth lineman now, they wanted more of a specifically a center type of player. They decided to make the move on Cameron Herron. They've been talking to him for a few weeks. They were able to get him on campus this weekend. Once he committed to take the official visit, Trevor, it was kind of like, okay, now that he's doing that, it's a done deal. And he's the reason why we were late putting our visit list together, because we knew that there was going to be a surprise visitor, and it ended up being Cameron Herron. So he was on campus this weekend and was able to get out and see Notre Dame in person. They were able to see him in person, and this is where it's at. So he is now a member of the Notre Dame 2025 recruiting class.
Again, I mean, it's good. You have another flip of a commitment from a school that is known for producing good offensive linemen, and they are a run-heavy team in the Big Ten. So, I think that it's a good pickup from him. It's also cool that he goes to Warren Central, so a little bit of homage to Indianapolis, which is pretty cool. So I always like hearing about recruiting stories from athletes around here. I know it's kind of weird, but it makes you think, like, you always hear about when you get recruited to go to a big school, they're coming from California, they're coming from Texas, they're coming from Florida, and this one was right here in the backyard, which is why I followed Blake Fisher pretty closely, because he went to Avon, which is another suburb of Indianapolis. So it's where my wife works. So it's really cool to see. But yeah, it's a good flip. It's a good pickup. Adds depth to the class from an offensive lineman perspective. He plays with really good leverage. He's a relatively athletic interior offensive lineman. Some things where he'll have to fill out a little bit, but I know we're going to dive into the film here pretty soon. But man, above all, it's a good get.
Let's dive into the class impact for Cameron Herron. And obviously Notre Dame has 3 kids committed in the class right now. You have Will Black, who I grade as a top 100 player, Owen Strebig, who's a top 100 player on my board, and then also Matty Augustine, who I have as a top 250 player with a very high ceiling. Matty Augustine's ceiling, in my opinion, is actually higher than Owen Strebig's. He's just got a lower floor, which is why Owen Strebig grades out higher. Now, they both have, I believe I have them both at 4.5-star upside grades. Will Black is now bumped up to a 5-star upside grade after I watched his senior film. I'm not quite there with the 5-star now stuff yet, but the film so far as the senior season is very impressive. So this young man joins that. But those are 3 tackle bodies. Will Black, 6'7", 295. Owen Strebig is like 6'8", 290. Matty Augustine, 6'6", long. He's up to I've been told he's up to about 285, 290 now. As a senior, and he's moving very well. I've seen a little bit of film of him. Watching some of the stuff on Blake Hebert, you'll see obviously Matty Augustine playing for him. And very talented football player, Trevor. And so the thought coming in was, look, 3 was the number. They thought about taking a 4th. They decided to pass on a couple guys, Jack Lang being one of them that they decided to pass on and not take. They were going to take a 4th, but it had to be like a dude. I know they like Josh Petty a lot, but since then the staff has kind of changed their tune, and they decided they wanted a 4th offensive lineman, and they wanted that player to specifically be a center type of player. Now, I believe Owen Strebig and maybe Matty Augustine could also eventually move to guard, but neither of those guys are really going to be centers. They're way too long to be centers. And length isn't a great thing, which is interesting because this kid has a lot of length, but he's at least kind of short and stubby, so there's some things you can do. But a big high-cut, long-arm center is going to have a very slow snapping process. And so that's part of the reason centers tend to, not always, you'll find some 6'6" centers out there. They tend to be on the shorter side for those type of reasons. So this is a kid that they viewed as a center, and it was a specific need, not just a fourth lineman, but there was a specific need that they were looking for, and that's why Cameron Herron was their choice. Whether you agree with it, don't agree with it, like him, don't like him, that's not the point. The point is, this is just explain why he was the pick, and he was the pick because this is what the staff viewed they needed in this class. And I believe that some people have said, well, hey, are they going to lose somebody? And there's always that threat in the modern world. But I think this had more to do with not really feeling great about the true centers. I mean, you've got Ashton Craig, who's going to be a senior next year. You've got Joe Wadding, who I know the staff likes, and that's it right now at center. You've got Pat Coogan, who's starting there now, but he's a senior. He'll be a fifth year next year. So you're starting to think about 25, 26, 27 offensive class. You may not have Ashton Craig on those 26, 27 teams. You're definitely not going to have Pat Coogan. You'll have Joe Wadding, but who are the other centers? No one in last year's class is really projecting a center as much now that Anthony Knapp's playing tackle, because that was the guy that they kind of viewed as being maybe a center down the road. He's starting left tackle now, so you have to take that into account as well. I think that's the reason why, along with the fact that you're now going to have 105 scholarships to deal with next season, that Notre Dame felt comfortable taking a kid like Cameron Herron and now fitting him into that class. And it's interesting. We've always said, you look at those three offensive linemen next to each other, and there's Matty Augustine at 6'6" with his shoulders crossed, and all the linemen are like this, and you're like, Matty Augustine is like 6'6", and he's not nearly as tall as the other two kids, right? Now you throw in Cameron Herron, who this summer at Notre Dame measured in at 6'2.5". That's going to be a fun-looking picture when you see that group of four guys standing next to each other. It's 6'8", 6'7", 6'6", and then 6'2.5" down here, Cameron Herron. But again, he's going to be right in the center of that line, and that's you can get away with that lack of maybe height, which I don't care as much about height for linemen, but you don't see a lot of 6'2" centers, left tackles. There's exceptions like Isaiah Wynn from Georgia a few years ago, but you don't see him a lot, Trevor, and there's a reason for that.
Yeah, all those guys standing next to each other is going to look like me next to a lot of my groomsmen. And I'm not a short guy by any means, but I'm like 6 foot, 6'1" with shoes, but 6 foot tall. And I had groomsmen. My groomsmen went 6'6", 6'5", 6'3". And so, we took the pictures with me in the middle and everybody kind of branching out. And it was very much how I imagine Cameron Herron looking standing next to some of those guys. But yeah, I mean, he's an athletic guy. I like the move to add him, especially with, it's a depth piece at center. And one thing that Mike Denbrock has shown this year is that he will pull Pat Coogan to be lead blockers on certain counters and on quarterback counters. So getting an athletic center like this guy, I like the move. So interested to see where he's going to fill in and like what his spot is going to be and what the role is going to be on the team. But I'm excited to see it.
So let's dive into the film, Trevor, and we're going to take a look at Cameron Herron, and we'll talk about the things we like about him, and then some of the things that I'll be honest with you, I'm a little concerned about when you watch this film. I saw him in camp this summer, and he was solid. He didn't blow me away. Moves relatively well. He's quicker than he is kind of long speed. He's very good in short areas. He doesn't have I didn't view him as like that super twitchy athletic guy that's going to be wrapping around all the time and getting out to the perimeter. But in his short space, he did show some that initial quick change of direction. The wild thing is I didn't see long arms on when I saw him this summer. I didn't. And I'll be honest with you, I don't necessarily see super long arms on film, and I could just be missing it. But he measured in this summer at Notre Dame with 35-inch arms, which is really long arms. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. But let's check out the film and take a peek at Cameron Herron. And the first thing you're going to see, again, he's a little bit sawed off. He's not the thickest kid in the world. You see that quick trap motion, little tight-hipped. You can see it there, but he does have that initial quickness. He's very much a try-hard guy, Trevor. He's a very powerful kid. He competes, he battles. You can see that there, a little bit of that little extra edge to him. He's an undersized kid. He's at left guard, by the way, number 58. There's another quick trap. Want to see him use his hands a little bit better there, but he is a physical kid. There's no doubt about that, Trevor. He's going to compete and fight and really get after it in the run game. And that's what you're bringing him in here to do, right? Is to get out, kind of use that leverage, get after it in the run game. and try to get moving. I think he can work up to the second level relatively well, but that's where you're getting him right there, Trevor. That's what you want to see from him right there is that it's coming off the line. I'd like to see him get his pads a little. He doesn't play with super pad level for a guy that's only 6'2.5".
Yeah,
because he bends at the hip a lot. I want to see him kind of work on that. That's a nice job right there. But he's not real consistent with it, Trevor. But you see him move those feet. He's got nice foot quickness, and he's a pretty strong kid. That's definitely something you see on film.
he does a good job at finishing blocks that I've noticed too. I would like to see a little bit more drive instead of that shoulder check that he does a little bit to finish some blocks. But that's going to be one of the things that through development, you're not going to be able to do that to a collegiate defensive end.
Like this guy gets underneath him a little bit. He does a good job of recovering, but like when you're that size, you got to be winning the low man off the line battle all the time. When you're 6'2.5", 275 pounds, you've definitely got to win that battle. But he said, like, those are all coaching things that they can be worked on. He's a very tough kid. He's honestly going to be a lot like Pat Coogan, space guy, quick traps. He's not going to be that super athletic, fly him all over the field kind of center, Yeah. It's just not who he is. But you're looking for a tough mauler type of kid, which is what Joe Rudolph seems to like. Hey, who cares about pass pro? He can maul in the run game, right? So what if the left tackle can't protect the quarterback? He can run block like a champ. That's at least what we've seen this season anyway. So, yeah, he's a tough kid. He fits that mold of the attitude you're trying to get into the program. See more of him here. Now, one thing, Indianapolis does have good football. Like Indiana as a whole does not have great football. It doesn't. Indianapolis and Fort Wayne are the two areas in the state where you see a lot of good football, and Indianapolis is number one on that list. And when I've ever been to staffs that recruited Indiana, those are the two places we went. There was only one kid I recruited out of South Bend, and that was Jesse Stiers. Everywhere else we recruited was Indianapolis or Fort Wayne. And that's where we had a lot of our success. I had an all-freshman receiver at Defiance in 2013. 2013. He was a kid from, I think, Lawrence North, I think. Trey White, really good player. That's there's good there is. So you're going to get a kid that's played against good competition, and you don't have a lot of that in the state of Indiana.
Yeah, Indian surrounding areas has really strong high school football. So the competition that he is playing against is up there for sure.
Mm-hmm. You see this a lot, Trevor. You talk about he does have a little bit of that edge to him.
Yeah.
Where he wants to smack people, man.
Yeah.
He wants to smack people. Sometimes that little man syndrome can sometimes be a good thing for you. You know what I mean? Like, hey, I got to play a little extra harder. I got to play, and I'm being serious. Like, I got to play a little extra tougher. I got to have a little bit extra attitude if I'm going to be a Division I offensive lineman at 6'2", 275 pounds, right? I mean, you've got to have that little extra something to you.
Hey, man, sometimes, 100%. He kind of reminds me. He's like the Bonzie Colson of offensive linemen.
Yeah, I like that.
He plays at the 4. He's kind of a stretch 3, but he's only 6'5", but he has like an 80-inch wingspan, so he can just guard anybody. I mean, sometimes you just kind of need that guy like that just plays with the chip on his shoulder and just loves contact. I mean, that's what you want out of an offensive lineman, just somebody that loves hitting people.
Yeah. Michael Johnson, just real quick, the uniforms do look similar, but Blake Fisher played at Avon. This is Warren Central. This is where Sheldon Day went to high school. This is Sheldon's high school. This is a clip, Trevor, right here, but like these are the type of things where they do concern me a little bit. You can see a kid that's a little tight. His ankles are a little tight. His hips are a little tight. He doesn't bend well enough at the knees. Like that's something that he's going to have to, I don't know if he can be improved on. Maybe it's a technical thing. I'd have to see, but you see that, and that's why you say he's a pure center, in my opinion. Maybe could be a power guard, but I think he's a guy that you really have to project at center. And I was glad to see that as a senior, he was actually playing a little bit of center and seems to snap the ball pretty well. Good zip, good accuracy from what we've seen. So there's some things to work with there. But the fight is why they are, you like this kid. And again, his short area quickness is pretty good.
Yeah.
He doesn't have that long speed that you kind of look for in an offensive lineman, screens and being elite on the second level and things like that. But short area, there's a lot to work with. And he does have powerful hands. I mean, this isn't necessarily a great example because that kid's kind of small, but he strikes people, man. And he does have long arms. I just didn't see 35 inches. You know what I'm saying? Like that's my thing.
Sure. He has a strong punch, and he definitely has a good foundation that the offensive coaches can work with. I think that's going to be the biggest thing with this kid, because there are some things where a lot of time
it's a really nice pull right here, by the way.
That is.
Sorry, keep going, Trevor. Yeah.
There are times when he is on the interior of the offensive line. He's very quick to stand up, like very quick to be vertical, which again, I do think that that's a thing with coaching. Once you get to that level, you start playing lower, the pad level has to be lower. But the concern is he's a 6'2" interior offensive lineman. And the initial thought shouldn't be coming straight vertical, but
right.
Things to work on and things to improve. But he does show some good short burst quickness. I don't think he's a guy that's going to be lead blocking on a screen 20 yards down the field, but he finishes blocks well. Dude just loves contact.
Look at that extension, though. That's nice stuff. But again, this is this is terrible technique, but that's something right there that can be corrected.
Mm-hmm.
You lunge like that against a Division I defensive tackle, he's going to throw you to the ground.
Yeah.
You're not doing that to him. But those are things that you always look. So, okay, is this something that can be corrected, or is this the problem that's going to hurt him? Well, it's going to hurt him if he doesn't fix it, but it can be corrected. So, like you said, are you getting a high ceiling player? No. Are you getting a kid with a pretty decent floor? I think so. Are you getting a kid that brings some of the demeanor that you're looking for more of in the offensive line? Yes. You're getting a fighter. You're getting a scrapper. You're getting a kid that's going to get after it. You're getting a kid, too, that worked to try to earn this scholarship. Part of the reason he gets this scholarship is because he came to camp this summer, competed his butt off for it in front of the Notre Dame coaches. And even though it didn't work out at the time, it has now. And that's something that I look for and I like. I like the fact that they have multiple colored helmets. You don't see that in high school teams a whole lot, Trevor. Looking like Wake Forest right now out there. But, again, played both guard, played both center. I'm sure he could play some guard, but center's the preference for him right now. Yeah.
Well, and I think one thing that's promising, too, is he was flipped from Iowa. You know what I mean? This was a guy where Iowa looked at and they were like, no, we want you to come here, offer you a scholarship. He went through the commitment process. So that is another thing that does make me feel a little bit better, because the coaches, somebody at a higher level than me and what I'm qualified to do, looked at this kid and they were like, multiple schools now have been like, there's something here that can be built upon.
I've had some concerns. I'll be honest. I've had some concerns about Iowa's offensive line in the last several years. Like maybe Kirk Ferentz is losing his touch, but there was a time not that long ago, Trevor, where if Kirk Ferentz offered a Midwestern lineman, I paused. Let me see. Let me look at that kid again. I didn't like his film initially, but Kirk Ferentz wants this kid, so let me go back and watch that kid's film again, because Kirk Ferentz knows more about offensive line play than I do. You know what I mean?
Right.
And even though it's still Kirk Ferentz, and you like to think that maybe the new offensive line coach, who's not his son, who is developing actually a good offensive line finally at Iowa again, maybe he saw this kid and saw something he liked as well as Kirk Ferentz. So that does. To your point, that does add a little something to it, Trevor. When I've said this before, like I don't care about certain schools offering every kid at every position. Oh, Ohio State offered that kid. All right, I don't care. Like they don't have the reputation of recruiting or developing that type of player like they do receiver. If Ohio State offers a receiver, I'm paying attention. If they offer a guard, I'm not as concerned about that. But Notre Dame should go after the kid because who's got a better track record of producing NFL linemen the last 10 years, Notre Dame or Ohio State, right? But when you look at Iowa, they're one of those schools. Wisconsin used to be this way for me, Trevor.
Yeah.
They used to be one of those schools where I'd say, hey, look, if Wisconsin wants a kid, I'm taking a second look at them. You know what I mean? And Michigan used to be that way too. Like if you were in a battle for Michigan for an offensive lineman back in the day, you knew you were getting yourself a good football player more often than not.
Sure.
And then, of course, Notre Dame became that program under Harry Hiestand. Like if Harry wanted a guy, all of a sudden this kid's offer list would take off. You know what I mean? So And hopefully this kid is like that. But like you said, there's some tools to work with. This is not a top 100 kid. This is for me, he's a 3.5-star kid with a 4-star upside is what I graded him at, Trevor. And it's going to be like some other guys. Can he fill out that frame? Can he get up to 300 and still move the way he does? Can he improve the technical aspects of his games, things like that? So there's certainly some things to work with, and he's a quality prospect. He's a quality prospect. He's a much different prospect than the other three they landed too, not just in size, but those guys are all super high ceiling guys. This is a little bit more of an attitude guy, a fighter type of kid, a mauler type of kid, plays with a little bit of an edge. He's being brought in for a specific role, and hopefully he'll play that role well. We'll see.
100%.
So Trevor, that is it for Cameron Herron. As far as what's next, obviously Notre Dame is done with offensive linemen for the 2025 class. Now they're going to get back to, they've still been putting together their 26 board. Notre Dame is obviously on a lot of kids. We've seen Sullivan Garvin got offered recently. I know that Ben Nichols was on campus recently. There's a lot of other kids on the board. I'm drawing a complete blank on the kid from Pennsylvania that I like. Tyler Merrill. So I know a guy that they like a lot. There's a kid from Virginia that they've talking to that I'm really hoping that they offer at some point in time. There was a camp this summer. So they're putting that 26 board together. Kid like this gives you a little bit more, more leeway numbers wise next year. You don't have to go big in numbers next year. If this kid gets on campus and looks the way that, he does. So I like it, man. I like where they're at. I like the offensive line class. I'm okay taking a kid like this. I'd have been okay if they stuck with the three they had. I'm okay with taking a kid like this. And, certainly it's always good to get an in-state kid, right? Like I always like when they get in-state kids. And this is another in-state kid that they've landed. So that's Cameron Herron. So, Trevor, we have a couple super chats that I want to get to before we get out of here. Got one from Anthony Solomon. Anthony says, super chat for Angela throwing Bryan under the bus. That's how the show started today, folks. We weren't even started yet, and Angela threw me under the bus. She told people that I was up there talking to her, but I was doing that because I was trying to do Vince a favor. Mm-hmm. And then this is what I get, Trevor. This is what I get. I get thrown completely under the bus.
Jeez.
Yep. And then I asked Angela to do me a favor earlier. I said, hey, could you do me this favor to help Vince out? And her response was, no, I'm busy in the chat. So I was like, seriously? So that's why I was laughing earlier. Super chat from Jeremy Snell. What's up, Brian? Jaboski giving some props. I appreciate you, man. Miss not having you on the board anymore, man. I hope you're back sometime soon. But we'll love to hear your thoughts on these two pickups. I appreciate the super chat. Dan Benami with a super chat. Knowing what we know now in hindsight, would you still gone after Deuce or taken Bear Bachmeier a while ago? What was Herbert's main reason to flip to Notre Dame? We haven't talked to him yet, so I don't know that main reason yet. And we'll hopefully get a story coming out here soon. But would not change a thing about quarterback recruiting because at the end of the day, Blake Hebert's a better player than Bear Bachmeier. So if you had to go through this weird, twisted road with Deuce,